I have always felt that there is a mystery so close to us that it is impossible not to notice it, if only one dares to look directly. This force both terrifies and attracts, because it brings a person back to himself, to his true nature, to that divine origin that for centuries was hidden behind the walls of temples and dogmas. It was called by many names: Kundalini, serpent fire, chi, prana, life energy. But at the core of all these names lay the same thing: the fire that gives life, and that can also destroy if one is not ready to accept it. I realized that its most forbidden form is sexual alchemy. And it is about this that I have dared to speak, because this is the path that all institutions of power, religion, and society turned away from, fearing one thing: that man would realize how free he truly is. I saw how this thread stretched through the ages. In Egypt, the initiates gathered in the temples of Isis and Osiris to awaken anastasis, the resurrection of the life force within the living body. It was not a miracle of raising the dead. No, it was the miracle of awakening the sleeper. They knew how to direct the energy upward, along the spine, turning desire into vision, pleasure into power. And in India, the masters of Tantra taught to see in the union of man and woman the reflection of the cosmic act of creation, Shiva and Shakti joining in their bodies, giving rise to vibrations capable of awakening Kundalini. In Greece, during the Dionysian festivals, wine, ecstasy, music, and physicality became a bridge to the divine. The modern mind would call it debauchery, but the ancients knew. These were gates through which one could step into another state of consciousness. And how did it come to be that what was once sacred became sinful? I see the answer clearly: because he who masters his fire no longer needs another's power. The person who awakens his creative energy does not bow before priests. He himself becomes the temple. He does not seek intermediaries. He himself becomes the priest. He does not worship gods. He himself becomes a god. To religions, politicians, rulers, this was unbearable. And so began the great distortion. Desire was declared a sin. Pleasure was turned into guilt. The body was made the enemy. The fire that was meant to rise up the spine now scattered into the smoke of the unconscious. I saw how medieval Europe plunged into darkness. The church proclaimed, even in marriage, sex is only a necessity to continue the family line. Any striving for pleasure, a mortal sin. Women who knew herbs, who could heal, those who remembered ancient practices, were branded witches and burned at the stake. But in other corners of the world the knowledge lived on. In China, Taoist masters hid treatises that taught how to return the seed. Men were forbidden to waste their vital force in the emptiness of orgasm. Instead, they directed it upward, to the heart, to the brain, nourishing the spirit, strengthening the body. These teachings were given only to the chosen, only to those who were ready. I realized that in all cultures the same message existed. Sexual energy is not merely the instinct of reproduction. It is the primal fire. It is magic that can either enslave or liberate. And when I looked at the symbols, I saw confirmation. The caduceus of Hermes, the staff around which two serpents entwine. It is not just a sign of medicine and commerce. It is a symbol of the spine, around which rises the double current of energy. In Tibet, they spoke of Kundalini as a serpent sleeping at the base, waiting for awakening. In Egypt, they depicted solar discs with cobras, the very same hints at the force hidden at the root of the human body. And I asked myself, why was this fire hidden? Why was it turned into taboo? The answer is always the same: power. Because the man who masters this fire cannot be subdued. He does not need laws, because the law burns within him. He does not seek strength outside, because strength flows through his spine, his heart, his mind. And then it becomes clear: the easiest people to rule are the weak, the weary, the ones cut off from their own energy. And the modern world continues the same game. We are sexually stimulated at every step, but in truth we are drained. We are surrounded by images, by advertising, by pornography, but this is not the power, only its shadow. The fire was turned into spectacle, into commodity, into addiction, and the true fire still sleeps within us, awaiting awakening. I saw how only a few awaken this fire. I read of practices where breath becomes the key. Mantak Chia wrote of the microcosmic orbit, of how energy can flow through the body, rising from the genitals to the brain. I read Wilhelm Reich, who said that a suppressed or chaotic orgasm destroys the psyche, but conscious use of sexual energy makes one whole. I recalled the stories of Indian saints. Ramakrishna said that he turned his desire into light, and this light filled his body. And I thought of Tesla, who renounced intimacy not out of moralism, but because he turned that fire into inventions, into discoveries, into ideas ahead of their time. And I understood: the force of desire is not the enemy. It can burn you if you surrender to it unconsciously. But if you are aware of it, if you direct it, it becomes light. It is like a river that can wash away its banks and destroy everything in its path. But if you build a dam, if you channel the current into turbines, the river gives electricity, life, movement. So it is with sexual energy. Desire is the water, consciousness is the turbine. And when I think of this, I recall the words of Manly P. Hall. The aura of the initiate becomes radiant, emitting an influence that draws everything around it, even without words. I have seen such people. They do not need to speak of power. Their very presence is mesmerizing. This is magnetism, born not of appearance, not of words, but of inner fire. And yet I also saw how the world lives in paradox. We are surrounded by stimulation, yet we are empty. We have lost the thread that once bound desire to the sacred. We have stopped seeing the body as a temple. And perhaps the greatest robbery of mankind is not fire stolen from the gods, but man himself, stolen from his connection with that fire. I realized that true art is not in merely possessing this fire, but in knowing what to do with it. The alchemists called it transmutation. And how many people today think transmutation means suppression, denial, abstinence? But no, that is the greatest and most dangerous delusion. Suppression is the death of fire, while transmutation is its ascension. It is like the transformation of lead into gold, not by rejecting the lead, but by elevating it. So it is with sexual energy, not to destroy desire, not to run from it, not to feel ashamed of it, but to raise its vibration. Then what once seemed like an animal instinct turns into the wings of spirit. I read the tantric treatises where it was said, orgasm is a doorway. But most pass through it blindly, losing their energy into the void. The initiates, however, turn orgasm into a moment of awakening, when the fire rises upward, moving through the chakras, cleansing each one until, at the crown of the head, it becomes light. And I knew this was not just beautiful words. In Tibet, there were monks who practiced sublimation for months, and their bodies radiated heat even while sitting in snow. Taoist masters had the ability to control inner energy so that it healed illness, prolonged life, and gave the face a glow. And all of this was born from the same source, sexual force directed upward. I saw how Wilhelm Reich, exiled and ridiculed, declared that the suppressed orgasm lay at the root of the neuroses of the modern world. People fear their own power, and so their psyche is twisted, becoming a battlefield. But he also pointed to another path, conscious integration, the conscious orgasm, where energy does not dissipate outward but rises within. He called this force orgone, cosmic life energy, and even built devices to harness it. They destroyed him, burned his works, but the idea remained, because truth burns even under ashes. I recalled stories where the practices of sexual alchemy made people something more than human. The Indian Saint Ramakrishna said he felt flashes of light in his body when he sublimated his desire. His disciples saw him enter ecstasy without touch, without external stimulus, only through the force of inner fire. I thought of Nikola Tesla, who said he did not allow his passions to distract him because within that power lay his fuel. He built the future because his energy, instead of scattering, became illumination, vision, the electricity of ideas. And I saw the confirmation. Sexual energy truly can nourish everything, not only the body, but the mind, the soul, creativity. I understood that transmutation is not the rejection of desire, but its purification. The sexual alchemist does not run from desire and does not demonize it. He looks it in the eyes, holding it in his hands like fire. If you throw a torch into dry grass, the blaze will consume everything. But if you hold the torch in your hands and know where to direct it, it lights the way. So it is here. I saw how many fear their passions and therefore try to kill them. But to kill desire is to kill life itself. Desire is the spark. It cannot be destroyed, it can only be distorted. And then I understood another paradox. Yes, one can live an active sexual life and still transmute energy. Because it is not about whether you abstain or not, but about how you use the moment, how you enter the act. If it is automatism, escape from self, the wish to forget, then the energy dissipates. But if it is an act of awareness, filled with intention, united with breath, with attention, with love, then this is already alchemy. Then every union becomes a ritual, every orgasm a portal, every act an ascension. I remember reading about the practices of Tibetan yogis. They spoke of how sexual energy must pass through this central channel rather than disperse into the side flows. For this, they sat in meditation for hours, holding the fire within until it became light. And in China, the masters studied this circulation of light, a breathing practice that lifts energy along the spine, uniting heart and mind. They said that a man who learns this gains magnetism, charisma, the power of attraction, and not because he seeks to control others, but because a sun burns within him. And when I think of magnetism, I see the faces of those I have met along the way. These people were not the most beautiful, nor the richest, nor the most famous. But around them, everything seemed to come alive. Their presence was felt on the skin. They did not demand attention. They drew it naturally, like a star draws light. And I understood, this is the effect of transmutation. This is power that requires no effort. It simply radiates. Modern science has also begun to touch on this. I saw studies from the HeartMath Institute, which said that the heart generates an electromagnetic field 1,000 times stronger than the brain. This field can be measured. It spreads around a person interacting with others. And when I read this, I realized the mystics were right. They always said that the aura of the initiate shines and attracts, that the body becomes a magnet. And now science is only beginning to suspect that this is truly so. But the mystics went further. They said that sexual energy, when sublimated, amplifies the aura. A person becomes an inner sun, radiating light and warmth that changes everything around them. In Taoism, this was called magnetic virtue, the natural force of attraction in one who lives in harmony with the Tao. In Hermeticism, it was called astral light, the etheric field where thoughts, emotions, and intentions circulate. And if the energy of desire is made conscious and directed, it becomes part of this field, bending reality, drawing events and people closer. I thought of the words of Carl Jung, who wrote that eros is not only the sexual instinct, but the psychic force that binds all existence. He called it the foundation of psychic energy, the invisible threads that connect people and events. And I understood, sexual energy is eros, which can either enslave you in craving or turn you into a center of gravity if you transmute it. And then the paradox opens. The more a person chases something outside, the further it slips away. But the more he radiates from within, the closer the desired becomes. True magnetism is not the effort to attract. It is a state of being. It is radiance. And I realized that the greatest masters of sexual alchemy were described as mesmerizing not because of something special in their appearance. They shone because within them burned the fire, purified and transmuted. I realized that this power does not forgive carelessness. It amplifies everything it touches. If there is shadow in a person, it will amplify the shadow. If there is light, it will amplify the light. And that is why the masters always warned. Before you raise the fire, cleanse the heart. For the stronger the flame, the brighter it illuminates, but also the more fiercely it burns. I saw examples of people who, awakening Kundalini without preparation, collided with madness. They burned themselves from within, because the energy pulled upward everything that had been hidden, fears, traumas, pain. Some lost their reason, others fell into fanaticism. I understood sexual alchemy is not a toy. It is a path that demands discipline, patience, and humility. A path that opens the gates to oneself, but you must be ready to see all that is stored within. I read about the shamans of the Amazon, who used the ayahuasca brew to open their inner fires. They said that serpents came during the ritual, climbing along the spine and showing the truth. But I also saw stories of those who came without respect, encountering terrifying visions, darkness they could not endure. It was the same fire, but distorted by their own fear. And then I understood. Sexual alchemy is neither suppression nor debauchery. It is the art of balance. It is the ability to hold the torch in such a way that it lights the path without burning it. It is that fine line where you turn desire into light without losing your humanity. I recalled the Taoist masters who said that the most important thing is not just breathing technique or semen retention. The most important thing is the state of the heart. They taught that the energy raised from the genitals must pass through the heart before it reaches the head. Without this, it becomes a cold fire, a power without love, and power without love always destroys. I saw how in tantric practices partners looked into each other's eyes, holding the energy within, turning the physical act into prayer. Their breathing merged, their bodies became a temple, and at the center something greater than orgasm opened. It was the feeling that the universe itself was gazing through them. That is alchemy, the union of earth and heaven in a single moment. I realized that the modern world has lost this key. We have come to see sex as entertainment, as commodity. But in antiquity, it was a bridge. I saw in the text that the Maya had rituals where the union of man and woman was considered a reenactment of the creation of the world. Among the Native Americans, shamans taught that sexual energy could heal the tribe if directed correctly. In Sufi mystical dances, I saw the same force, the ecstasy that did not end with the physical, but transformed into light. And all of this brought me back again and again to one thought. The body is a temple. But this temple we destroy with shame, prohibitions, fears. We fear our own nature and thus give our power away to those who know how to rule through that fear. Yet the moment you look inside, you see that the fire is still alive there. It slumbers, waiting to awaken. I felt how a person changes when he begins to transmute energy. His gaze becomes clearer, his skin brighter, his movements more assured. He does not demand, he attracts. He does not search, he radiates. I saw how women were drawn to such men not because they were handsome or wealthy, but because they were full of power. And conversely, men sought women in whom this inner light burned, even if their appearance fit no standard. This is magnetism that cannot be faked. I knew that many seek the easy path. They want a technique that will give them power overnight. But I understood, this is not a path for the impatient. The alchemists always said, the great work takes time. It is not about tricks, not about manipulating external reality. It is about transforming oneself. And when you change within, the world rearranges itself, as if it dances around a new sun. I remembered the words of Paracelsus. He who controls his fire controls the universe. I began to see that this was not a metaphor. When a person transmutes his sexual energy, he becomes a center of gravity. The world begins to reflect his vibration. Events, people, opportunities come to him not because he chases them, but because he radiates what he seeks. But I also saw the other side. When someone awakens energy without a pure heart, he becomes a monster. His magnetism turns into domination, manipulation, destruction. History knows such examples. Charismatic leaders who led masses, but in their hearts there was no light. Their power came from the same source, but was directed into darkness. This is the dark side of alchemy. And that is why the masters always said, begin with purification. Before you raise the fire, know what is within you. Because what you raise will be multiplied 1,000-fold. I saw this in myself as well. I knew that every time I acted out of fear, the energy became chaos. Every time I raised it with love, it became light. This is the boundary that cannot be explained in words. It can only be lived. And then I realized, sexual alchemy is the greatest magic. Not because it gives power over the world, but because it gives power over oneself. It is the art of turning the densest matter into the finest light. It is the path of returning to oneself. And it is a path that has no end. I understood that in the end we do not attract what we ask for, but what we are. Everything we send outward returns to us. But sexual alchemy magnifies this, because it is intention charged with life force. It is not merely thought, it is fire that animates everything it touches. And so the masters always warned, if your heart is full of shadow, do not awaken the power, for it will only amplify that shadow. But if there is light within you, if you walk toward truth, then this energy will turn you into a sun. I saw how this alchemy changes everything. A person who once was a slave to passion suddenly becomes master of his world. He no longer chases pleasures, for pleasure is born within him. He no longer seeks recognition, for charisma radiates on its own. He no longer pursues power, for power becomes unnecessary. He himself becomes the center, and the world reorganizes around him. It is as if you polish a mirror, and the cleaner it becomes, the more clearly truth is reflected within it. I realized that sexual energy, when transmuted, becomes creativity. When it is not wasted, it seeks other channels of expression. It becomes music, paintings, words, discoveries, courage, vision. I saw this in the lives of geniuses. Leonardo da Vinci wrote that the artist must preserve his force within himself to turn it into paintings. Nikola Tesla said his energy went into inventions. The great mystics created teachings because their fire did not dissipate outward, it transformed into the word. And I saw the opposite. When energy is wasted unconsciously, clarity is lost. A person becomes dependent, seeking more and more pleasure, yet never finding satisfaction. It is like a bottomless well. The more one drinks, the stronger the thirst grows. And this is the hell of the modern world. Abundance of stimuli, but emptiness within. I understood that the key is presence. It does not matter whether you live in celibacy or in relationship. What matters is where your attention is. If you are fully present in the moment, if you unite body and soul, if you are aware of each breath, then even physical pleasure becomes a portal. It no longer pulls you outward, it returns you inward. This is the conscious orgasm that nourishes rather than depletes. I remembered the words of the ancient alchemists. The secret fire burns, but does not destroy. It is the fire that warms without consuming. It is the energy that turns into light, into strength, into magnetism. And when this fire burns within, you become a living magnet. People feel it without even knowing why. It is like gravity that draws events, opportunities, people. But in truth, it is only the mirror reflecting what lies at the center of your being. I began to see this in everything. I realized that the universe always responds not to words and not to requests, but to vibration. It hears not what you say, but what you are. And when sexual energy is transmuted, your vibration becomes high, clear, pure. Then the world begins to dance around you. Not because you forced it, but because you became that with which it longs to resonate. I realized that sexual alchemy is not just a practice, it is a way of life. It is a way of seeing the world. It is the path where you no longer fear desire, but embrace it as fuel, where you no longer reject the body, but honor it as a temple, where you no longer see fire as sin, but understand it as liberation. And then I saw the greatest secret. The entire universe is the union of opposites. Masculine and feminine, light and darkness, earth and sky, life and death, all of it dances together. And sexual energy is the reflection of that dance within us. When we unite the opposites inside, we become whole. And then separation disappears. Desire is no longer the enemy, the body no longer a prison, fire no longer a sin. All of it becomes light. I realized that in the end, sexual alchemy leads to becoming the sun, not in a metaphorical sense, but in a literal, energetic one. You begin to radiate. Your presence becomes light for others. You do not impose, you do not demand. You simply are, and the world responds on its own. This is true magnetism. It cannot be faked, cannot be bought, cannot be stolen. It can only be cultivated by purifying your heart and raising your fire. And then I realized the greatest miracle is not in controlling others or changing the world by force. The greatest miracle is the transformation of oneself. When dense desire becomes subtle light, when animal instinct becomes the wings of spirit, when body and soul are no longer divided. This is alchemy. This is magic. This is the secret that was hidden for centuries. Now I know. This power was always within me. It has always been within us all. It was demonized because it makes a human being free. It was hidden because it makes him divine. But it is still here, waiting to awaken. And if you dare to look within, if you embrace your desire and turn it into light, you will become the sun. And then the entire universe will begin to dance around your radiance.